Courtney here to speak. I've been really excited for it and just grateful that you all reached out. So my name is Courtney Vu. I am a security operations engineer at a company called The Trade Desk in ad technology. Sorry, getting a ton of speaker calls. Okay, there we go. Just for the talk today, it's going to be pretty quick and easy, but I figured I would just talk a bit about my experience and how I got here, a bit about the current work I do on the day-to-day, and one of my favorite security topics, which is how to build a security culture, which I found has been really valuable in my work experience. And at the end, if anyone has any questions, we can wrap up with a Q&A. So how did I get here? Brief history on me and who I am. I studied computer science and business administration from the University of Southern California. I'm originally from Seattle, but that's what brought me out here to the LA area. Since deciding to switch into the cybersecurity realm for my kind of education aspect, that's when I got a Google cybersecurity certificate, and I'm currently in the process of attaining a few additional industry certifications. So that's a bit about me and my educational background. Work-wise, after graduating, I was an intern at the Walt Disney Studios. Disney, I was an enterprise business systems intern, a fancy way of saying I worked in corporate IT, kind of on the management side and working on portfolios of all of our systems and things like that. After my internship at Disney, I then actually went to a cybersecurity company called Darktrace. They are a security platform, basically works on abnormal behavior. That's how it does its detections. And that's where I got my first taste of cybersecurity. I was a cyber technology specialist, which is just a fancy way to say I was the technical point of contact for our clients. So I would work hand in hand with them, help optimize their architecture and how our tool would sit with them. And I would also present on compiled threat intelligence reports. So basically communicating what our platform saw in their environment. And so that was an interesting time. It was my first step into cybersecurity, like I mentioned. However, it wasn't really cybersecurity specific in a way. Like a lot of my knowledge was specifically on our product. But I really enjoyed that type of work. But alas, Disney came calling again, asked for me to come back, and it was hard to say no to the magic and the mouse. So I went back to Disney. Again, was in the IT space, mostly as a project coordinator and then a business systems analyst, mostly helping with migration of systems during acquisitions. So I spent some time there, then moved over and did really a similar thing at MGM Studios, which was then later acquired by Amazon Studios, but again was a project coordinator and then advanced to a system administrator. So by the end of my time at MGM, I was managing over 900 endpoint devices for the company. My main focus was on pushing out updates, building packages, pushing patches. And so I actually worked really closely with our cybersecurity team there to make sure that all of our endpoints were up to date and were secure. And after working with them for quite some time, I really liked it. I thought it was a little bit more fast-paced and interesting than what I had been doing previously. So with that in mind, that's when I knew I wanted to switch in and focus more on cybersecurity. And that's when I did some studying, got my Google cybersecurity certificate just to get that foundational knowledge and to make sure I was steady there. And then I was applying for cybersecurity roles, and that is when I landed at the Trade Desk. So I've been at the Trade Desk for about a year and a half now as a security operations engineer. I will say a lot of the times from what I've seen, titles can vary, the expected work can vary. So I thought I would talk a little bit about what my day-to-day looks like. This is just a Google photo here. I did not share any company secrets, but it's very similar to the dashboard I get to work with pretty frequently in our SOC to take a look at what our current posture is. So just a really easy, simple breakdown of what my time looks like. A good chunk of it is spent triaging our alert queue. So we have really great detections in place. We have a lot of logs that we're looking at. And with a company of about 4,000 people, we see a good amount of alerts come through, whether it's suspicious sign-ins or potential malware on a computer, things like that. I spend a good amount of my time triaging these alerts and seeing what's a true positive, what's a false positive, what's an actual incident versus what's maybe just a vulnerability in our environment, and how do we handle those different items. Aside from triaging the alert queue, I also spend a good amount of time working on those actual incidents. Thankfully, we don't have a huge amount of true positives where we have active incidents that are going in or fires that we're putting out. But we are going through the whole incident framework where we're making sure things are contained, we're eradicating any threats, and then we're making sure we're recovering and getting our systems or our users back in operational. And so it could be, account compromise or a systems down or crypto miner on a machine, things like that. But that's also what I spend some time on, working on those incidents and closing those out. Aside from that, when we're not in active triage or incident handling, we spend a lot of time also focusing on how to enhance our security posture at the company. So that could include looking at new tools or whether it's for our security team on tools on how to defend or alert, or it could be on company-wide products like a password manager, things like that can help with the security posture. And so that's something we also like to get our hands in, research, maybe test out. So we're always trying to improve there. It could be as simple also as building out new detections or even adding more playbooks to our repertoire. And last but not least, I love my team for really encouraging this, but we really encourage professional development and training during the normal workday. I like to block some time out in my calendar and make sure I am doing some type of training or skilling up. We have a lot of great programs for ourselves, whether it's like immersive labs or O'Reilly, preparing for a certification, things like that. It's really important to stay on top of things. Cybersecurity is a very fast-moving industry, and so it's really important to stay skilled up and leveled up so that you can protect your environment to the best of your ability. So we make sure to build that into our day as well. I thought I would touch a bit on the trends of the types of incidents I see in the year and a half I've been at the company, because I thought I'd be a little bit more heads down in the back end, looking through logs, things like that. But I found a lot of my time is actually spent with speaking with our users. And I think you might see the trend on why that is, because some of the most incidents I see are around account compromises. Every single one is due to phishing, no matter how much training you do or what type of email gateway you use, they still get through. And so that's probably the number one type of incident I've had experience with. Other than that, another one we see often would be exposed credentials, exposed secret keys. Oftentimes this is user error. We've seen, screenshots of keys in a Jira ticket or people sharing credentials in a public Slack space. A lot of it comes down to user error. Sometimes some misconfigurations in a system, but a lot of the times it's just user error and mistakenly sharing things that should have been kept secret. The next most popular incident or vulnerability I've seen is honestly people downloading malware on their computers or just unapproved software. So I kind of did group malware and software sprawl together. People are sometimes just looking for a PDF converter and they download the first thing they see, and it turns out to not be what they expected. But I really blame the cause on this on elevated permissions. Again, kind of user error. We have approved software, but if you give folks wiggle room, oftentimes you'll see people can go and download whatever, which can cause some issues. And last but not least, we also have seen the trend of the misuse of data and or company assets, whether it is downloading stuff to your work computer that you maybe shouldn't download, or you are maybe taking off some company data from your machine and moving it to external hardware, things like that, that could be attributed to confusion around our acceptable use policy. So these are some of the leading trends I've noticed in my time at the trade desk and, just from talking with other industry professionals. And I think something that's really important to point out, and you probably already know, is that the majority of our incidents occur because of human error. If you do any general research or Google search, I think it's like 80 or 90% of data breaches or security incidents happen because of a person. And so this leads me into the topic I chose to talk about today, which is building a security culture. Because I think truly at the end of the day, you're only as strong as your weakest link, which means it really takes a village. Everyone has to have that security mindset to really secure your organization and all of the data and all of its people. So yeah, there's a little photo of our cybersecurity team and then some general stock photos of technology. But with that, I kind of split out this topic into just two quick and easy ones, which is what can your cybersecurity org do? So what can your team really do to encourage this mindset? And then afterwards, I'll talk about what you might be able to do as an individual contributor. So one of the key points, I believe, in getting a security mindset in your overall company is to have leadership support. It's really hard to get everyone to believe how important security is if they're not hearing it from leadership, if leadership hasn't bought into it as well. So I would definitely say it's really important for your org to communicate with leadership. Sometimes it means, talking about the financial strain a breach can have or the hit to your reputation. Sometimes for us, it's security. You should want to do it. But for other people, you might need to have some more justifications. And so it's really important to get leadership on board early on and to have that communication from them to the rest of your company. Another very important step, of course, is to develop employee training and awareness programs. So pretty much every company will have this. And as you kind of heard in my history, I've been in a few different companies. I've gone through several different cycles of employee training, and I've definitely noticed some trends of what sticks and what doesn't. And there are a lot of out-of-the-box trainings these days. KnowBe4, Minecraft, like the Mimecast, I believe, has their own training. And it's super useful because it's really just plug and play. You can just send these videos to your company. But I've noticed that it's also very beneficial to try to make them as personal and company specific as possible. In one of my previous roles, we did not outsource it. And we as a team actually built out all of our training programs where I would lead live courses as well as recorded myself training people. And it was really nice to actually have a face to the name, to the product, because people knew who to come to when they had questions. They actually paid attention because they felt bad just ignoring me. And I think something you might hear sometimes at companies are, oh yeah, I had to sit through the training. I just hit play and I was doing other work. And that's not great because people are basically ignoring the training, and that can lead to, all these incidents and breaches. So my advice is, if possible, really try to make it personal and company specific if you have the ability to kind of change up some of your training. Another thing I like to shout out, and I'm very grateful for our team, is to make like a standout newsletter. Stand out to your company. Let people know that you're there. And we have a quarterly newsletter called The Sentinel, and the person in charge of it is very funny, and the newsletter is usually full of just like memes and jokes, and we actually get feedback from users like this LOL fun, interesting, and useful newsletter, which shows me that they're actually reading it and they were entertained, and people were posting this in Slack as well, so it was getting shared, which was really neat and a great way to, again, get attention to the cybersecurity team and communicate that important information. Another thing that's very important for your org is to develop clear policies. I mentioned people being able to download things or maybe taking data accidentally. And a lot of the times that can happen because of unclear policies. So one of the first things the cybersecurity org should do is make sure that those are clear and easy to find. A lot of the times you might read and like sign off on a policy when you first join a company, and then 5 years later you haven't reread it, you don't remember what's in there. and you might be breaking some of these rules. And so it's really useful to have these, to stand by them and make it accessible so everyone knows where to go if they have questions. Next is definitely encouraging collaboration. Like I mentioned before, when I first started in cybersecurity, I kind of thought we'd be more heads down, just kind of doing our own thing, looking at logs, kind of having an isolated security team, but that is absolutely not true. It's so crucial to really collaborate with other teams, like IT, and that might seem obvious, but maybe even people operations or the client team. It's really important to, again, get your name out there, get the cybersecurity team out there, but to also have positive relations with all these teams, so that you have that bridge of communication. A lot of the times with cybersecurity, it can come off as us versus them. Sometimes people see cybersecurity as slowing them down, or trying to stop what they're working on, and that's the last thing we want to do. As a company, we want to succeed in what you're doing, what you're pushing out there, but we just want to do it securely. And so you can avoid the us versus them type of tension by working with them, and communicating with them and building those relationships, which has been extremely, extremely useful. And last but not least is to build a strong cybersecurity team, have strong professionals who love the work that they do, love cybersecurity, but also love spreading the message and making sure that the whole company is with them on having a security mindset. So for the security org side, this is really useful, in my opinion, on, if you have the opportunity to work with your cybersecurity leadership and to get this type of messaging or these efforts across. But at some point, there's not too much that you can do. You probably can't go up to your CEO and tell them, hey, you need to focus more on cybersecurity. You need to give us this much more money, blah, blah, blah. I really hope you do get to that point one day, but some of this is out of your hands. And so I did want to highlight just a few things that you could do and contribute as a professional or as an individual contributor. And that's really becoming your friendly neighborhood security contact. Remember that everyone makes mistakes. And this is kind of something I mentioned earlier on working with other people, is that it's really important to build those good relations with other folks. A bigger part of my job than I expected was actually reaching out to users and talking with them during their incidents, during investigations. And it was really nice because a lot of the times they feel so bad or they're really curious about what happened. And it's a great opportunity to build those relationships, help them understand why what they did wasn't necessarily secure. It helps them feel more comfortable coming to you if they notice something happen early on. Just recently, we were able to kind of help prevent some account compromises because someone came to us and was like, this email looks fishy. And we were able to get ahead of it rather than responding to the incident, thanks to them knowing who to come to for some help. And so, yeah, it's important to remember that everyone makes mistakes. Be kind to people when you're working with them, and let them know that you're there so that they know who to reach out to, because that will always help you in the long run. Also look for interdepartmental projects to work on. Again, this comes back to, working with other teams, being friendly. It's a great way to open up your mindset onto other tools that cybersecurity can have. We really should be in every facet of the company. Everyone should have security in mind. And so I really encourage being proactive on this, maybe not necessarily waiting for these projects to come around, but proactively going out, meeting other teams, and seeing how you can work together. Another thing I like to encourage is creating ways to communicate your security findings company-wide. And something I really like to think of, or what I like to keep in mind, is how would I share these findings with my loved ones? I don't know about you all, but I am absolutely IT help at home with my parents. They're constantly calling me, asking me for help, even though we are in different states. But I also am very aware of, when I learn about different scams that are going on, different things that are trying to take advantage of vulnerable people. I always make sure my parents are my first call, make sure they're trained up on what not to do, what to look out for. And so I think it's really important to bring that mindset also into your company and your organization, because, they are your coworkers, your colleagues, and you want them to be protected as well. And so I think it's helpful to just kind of go out of your way and communicate some of the everyday things that they could use to help protect themselves a little bit more. Another way to, of course, help your security mindset is to stay skilled up and continue your professional development. You have to be able to back yourself up when you're trying to encourage others to have that security mindset. So it's important to of stay in the know of the industry and what's going on. And last but not least, I really encourage everyone to think outside the box. Like I've mentioned a few times, when I started in cybersecurity, I really thought it would be a little more heads down, more technical. And while that's very important in having our shields and our gates up, it really comes down to the people. So getting creative and pushing yourself out of that familiar or comfortable zone can be really, really useful for yourself and your career, but also for the security of your organization. Spider-Man inspired this because, friendly neighborhood security contact, but also, funnily enough, my team is the SPIDER team, which stands for Security, Privacy, and Incident Detection, Engineering, and Response. So I just thought that was a fun tie-in. Another way my manager thought outside of the box, they wanted something that was memorable, catchy, and so we're known as, the SPIDER team. We gave out stickers, and people know who to come to when they have an incident or questions about security. So that's just one of the small things that you can do to really have people have that security mindset and just, help build up those walls. Secure walls, not walls of friendship or anything like that. All right, that's everything I have for you on me and myself, as well as building a security environment. So if anyone has any questions, I throw it back to you.
If anyone in the room has any questions, or if anyone on Zoom wants to type in a question, we'll be answering those as well. While we do that, I have a question myself. I was talking to someone who works in like the tech industry a long time ago, and I remember an incident, or not like a real incident, but like a kind of like a quarrel between teams where I think one of the teams brought in like a device to use, whether it was like a computer or some kind of other hardware, and
Mm-hmm.
they were having arguments with their security team, who was trying to basically say like, hey, you can't just bring in a device and use it and like connect it to the internet for obvious reasons. And so I think one of the, I guess, more common things, like you said, about building like that community is being able to work with teams. But I wanted to know more on like the logistical side. What would you guys have in terms of like your system to make sure that a device that's being used is, or a new device that's being used is, I guess, clean and like safe to use. And even like software, if someone wanted to download software for as a tool to use it for one of their tasks, what would like the process for that look like? And who would you have to contact to kind of start that process?
Yeah. To answer the first point, I think it's definitely useful to have different tooling in like your network to see when new devices are brought on board for making adding like conditional access policies. It has to have the company approved software, or it has to meet these requirements before connecting to the network, things like that. There's a lot of different ways system wise you can prevent things from connecting to your network, thankfully. So it's just having good detections built out for that, I think, is really important, or just rules of like what is allowed on the network and what's not allowed. Other than that, I think it's really important to lean heavily on your policies and your workflow. Things can really differ between different companies. But technically for us, we have a process for if it's not an approved software, you should be making a request. And that goes through one of our teams for vetting on, is this a trustworthy software? Like, do we allow for this? How much is it? Things like that. What are the security practices there? So ideally, that would be our perfect workflow is, if someone wants to bring on board new software, it should go through a whole vetting process. And we should be able to track what machines have what software and things like that. So that would be my answer. Did that answer your questions?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Okay, I think the next question we have is in the chat. I'll read it out loud. What was one of the most notable security incidents you've seen so far? I think you previously answered that like account compromisation through phishing is like the most common one you'd see.
Hmm.
Apart from that, is there any notable security incidents you've seen or anything that might, I guess, be on par with something you see commonly, such as phishing?
Yeah, okay. Let me think of what I can share on really notable ones. I mean, one of let's see. Let's see, what can I share? One that was quite interesting was and it ties into a little bit of both phishing as well as elevated permissions, but we have had a few users fall for the communications that are like, oh, your computer has been compromised, or you have malware on your computer, call this support number. And then, you end up installing a different, you install LogMeIn or TeamViewer, and then suddenly an external person has remote access uh, to someone's computer. And so that was pretty eye-opening for us because we realized we actually didn't have the detections in place at that time. And so it was through like word of mouth that we figured out that had happened. Um, but that one was a really interesting one. It encouraged us to build. It showed us one of the holes we had in our um, in our monitoring and logging and things like that. But that one was really interesting, where that user still didn't know at the end of the day, like that wasn't good and normal. Like we had to go in and be like, hey, so that was a scam. And we had to we had to resolve that whole incident. But that was something that we then shared in our newsletter to remind people to know, never call those numbers, call the internal IT team first. And we've seen a few attempts at that since then, but none have been successful thanks to the new detections we built out after that.
For sure. Yeah, very cool. I don't know if cool is the right word, but a very insightful, I guess, incident that happened there. I do want to kind of add on to phishing. I mean, I hate to bring AI into this, but especially with phishing, AI has made things so much more easier to fall for. And I think around like maybe a year ago, I don't exactly know for sure, but AI videos and things like that. We're still up and emerging, but I think we've reached a point where AI video and AI generative AI to create, I guess, deep fakes of people have become very, very realistic. And
Hmm.
as like I guess for what you do, I really wanted to ask if you have any, I guess, tips or advice on, I guess, detecting more specifically really, really like accurate phishing attempts where you could be sent a video or some kind of something that you wouldn't expect I guess an attacker to have access to in
Yeah.
terms of impersonation. Do you have any advice on how to detect that by chance?
That's yeah, that's a great question. I wish I had a better answer, but it's really just um, staying alert and always validating and verifying if you have any suspicions. I, have seen those articles that are like, oh, look for strange lighting, listen for strange cadence, look for, weird glass reflections, and that's all valid for sure. So I think it's really communicating with people to be on the lookout now that that has occurred more often. But to be honest, I went to a talk last year. I went to a conference and someone was very focused in cybersecurity and psychology. And one of the exercises he did was he showed us photos and videos, and it was a quiz on, is this AI generated or not? And basically it was a mess. People were much more confident that they could spot it than they actually were when it came down to it. And so that is unfortunate, of course, for us. So I think right now, the best tool is really educating people on it. And again, being aware of strange asks, like double check, like validate, verify, have modes and means of communication with people so that you can confirm what is expected. Um, I do believe that there are more and more people are working on products and tools to help us find these incidents and use cases, but I do think they're still in the pretty early stages. So I haven't had any experience personally using any of them, but hopefully we can use them in the future. I haven't seen any yet, but yeah, really at this point, it's just about educating people to be on the lookout for that, unfortunately.
For sure. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
To kind of switch the topic from fishing to more, I guess, like to your experience in your career. One of the questions in the chat is, what was a past role, certification, or experience that prepared you the most for your current role as a SOC engineer? And to kind of add on that, do you have any other words of advice on building your career and what you should try to go for and what you should try and accomplish or achieve?
Yeah, great question. For previous roles, I would really say probably my role as as a system administrator helped prepare me the most because I was working really closely with our cybersecurity team, learning more and more about vulnerabilities and required patches. And so I really give that a lot of credit for resparking my interest in cybersecurity, and kind of learning getting some hands-on experience, learning some of those basics. I think that was really important. But I really credit like all of my career with getting me to where I am today. You just get used to, hard work and learning quickly. And I think that's really useful is sometimes you just get thrown into a job and you got to learn quickly. I didn't really mention this when going into my history, but when I was at MGM, the reason I became a system administrator was I was actually brought on board just as an IT project coordinator. And then they had a new tool and it was to manage these computers, but no one was using it, no one was managing it. And my manager was like, is anyone interested? And I was like, I like learning new things. I like a challenge. So I was like, I guess I'll learn. And that is how I ended up transitioning into that role. Was just throwing myself into that. You know, I was very nervous. I was scared. But sometimes you have to push out of that comfort zone. And kind of that helps really teach me and build my confidence and my own abilities on how to learn quickly and how to adjust in a corporate environment. So that's what I would say was most useful in my past career, my past roles. General advice I would say is to shoot your shot. Try really hard. I didn't have any hands-on cybersecurity experience when I was applying to work in a cybersecurity role, but sometimes you make a decision, and if you want to go for it, you just have to go for it. And so I was applying blindly to all these different companies, just hoping someone would take a shot on me, and it worked out, which I'm really, really grateful for. So it's just don't give up. Don't be afraid. Just you might as well try. And I would also say, again, this goes in a little bit with cybersecurity, what I was saying, like thinking it would be more technical, but actually having a huge people aspect. I think that really works for your career as well. I know sometimes we don't like talking to a lot of people, going to these large events, but really networking can be so, so useful in making those connections, in opportunities. My connection to Disney, the reason why I got an internship there was I was actually a tour guide at USC. And during my tours, I would talk about what I was studying, my interests. And there was a mother on my tour who said, hey, I work for Disney. I'm looking for an intern. You seem great. Would you be interested? And so these opportunities can sometimes show up when you least expect it. And so keep an open mind to that and put yourself out there. And I think that can be really, really valuable with getting your foot in the door in a career, and to also, advance, meet new people. It'll give you a lot of opportunities.
Thank you so much. I definitely have to agree with that. And I think a good word to kind of wrap a lot of that is flexibility and just being able to kind of go where the wind takes you and to adapt within like the sphere that you're kind of involved in.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
With that, does anyone else have any more questions, either in the chat or in the room? We got one question in person. Go to the box.
Hi, thank you for coming along and presenting and talking to us. I had a question about what about your job you like the most and the least.
Were you able to hear that, Courtney?
No, I'm sorry. Would you be able to repeat that?
Do you want me to say? Okay, I think the question was among the lines of the best part and the worst part about your job, something on like both spectrums.
Great. Best part and worst part. I'll start with the worst. I would say is that security incidents never sleep. Worst part is sometimes waking up on a Saturday morning thinking you're in for a nice weekend and someone has done something a little silly and now you have to work for a few hours in the day. I would say, yeah, that's the worst part, is security never sleeps. But the best part, I think, would be I think the best part of my job is my team. I really love my team. I think we inspire each other, we push each other to be better, we learn from each other constantly. And so I think it's really important to have a strong team that encourages your development, your growth, and that you can learn from. And we have each other's backs, which is really nice, especially in sometimes a high stress kind of environment. Yeah, I think that's my favorite part of my job.
All right. Any last questions? We had some really good questions today. Wait a couple more minutes, maybe just one more minute, but if not, we'll be good to wrap it up. So,
Courtney, are you able to share your LinkedIn? I don't know if anyone want to connect with you there and
Yeah,
follow up. Yeah, yeah. So
absolutely. I do not update my LinkedIn very often. So, but if you would like to reach out, absolutely. Should I? Here, let me get that link and I can send it in the chat.
sounds good. While we're doing that, I think we have a lot of time, so we can stick around for a little bit more, but I'm going to go ahead and end the recording here. So for the recording, thank you guys so much for either watching or attending this meeting, and I hope that the stuff you heard today will be really helpful in you in building your career.